Cool. Excellent. Good evening, one and all, or good morning, wherever you are. My name is James Boyle, and welcome to Football Business Network virtual Talking Football event. We are honoured this evening to be joined by Steve Curwood. Steve is the first international guest that I've had, if you don't count international soccer managers like Graham Arnold, but he's the first international businessman, the first true businessman that we've had on this call from a club across the pond. Steve is the CEO of Fleetwood Town, a club that many have become familiar with, I think, over the course of the last couple of years, specifically since they probably brought Joey Barton in to be the coach, but more importantly, since this is a club who 10 years ago were a non-league club. I think they were Tier 5 or Tier 60, if I'm correct. And in 10 years, we've had 5 promotions or 6 promotions, and literally missed out just in the championship playoff, which was, we lost to the eventual, or Fleetwood lost to the eventual winners of that, Wycombe Wanderers, who have just released, I don't know if you've seen, Steve, but they've just released their new kit, and it's colourful to say the least. Nothing like the Fleetwood Town away kit, which is absolute quality, but the Wycombe kit, interesting colour scheme. But good evening, one and all. So what we do here, this is a relaxed forum. There's no right or wrong or anything like this. This is an opportunity for you guys to have a chat, have a listen, ask anything that you want. What I ask you to do is, you see the chat button. If you've got any questions, please put them down in the chat. The last thing you want to do is hear a Scottish accent for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. So this is all about you. So ask any questions that you want. This is being recorded. It will be on all social media platforms over the course of the coming days. And as I say, if there's anything that you want to ask, feel free. Steve has indicated that nothing is off limits, but you know, I'm sure that he'll tell you if there's anything that he's not prepared or cannot answer, either in his role as CEO of Fleetwood or as a director of the FA. So welcome, Steve. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us this morning.
Welcome to yourself and everyone on the meeting. And no, it's great to be on, and I'd be interested to impart a little bit about the journey we've been on at Fleetwood, and you know, the more wider aspects of English football, both pre-COVID, presently, and where we go from here. So looking forward to it.
So I think a number of the people, and I can see the people that are joining the call, a lot of people that are on the call are from Australia. I think there's 1 or 2 UK people on the call as well. And as I say, the fact we're going social media wide will be very good as well. But Steve, if I can start, what I'd like to do is just ask you to provide a brief history of your journey, where you came from, how you got to where you are, and how you became the CEO of Fleetwood. I think you've been there, is it 4 years now? I think you've just celebrated.
No, much longer. Much longer.
Okay, so
yeah.
Just give us, you know, what your journey and how you went along and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, no, indeed. Well, from a football background, it was just probably like everyone else on this call, just a mad, passionate football supporter. I grew up around football. My grandfather played professionally. My father was a local amateur football. Cousins, everyone played football, so it was in my blood. I was a Blackpool supporter from the moment I started to go to football games, and virtually went to every game, home and away. Then manifested itself into wanting to see every single football ground. I completed all the 92 stadiums about the age of 20. I then started watching England. I've seen England play in 32 countries. So just a football freak and anorak, like probably many on this call. Career-wise, I was actually working for a bank. I was a a corporate business relationship manager, and the owner of Fleetwood Town, which at that time was actually in the, obviously if anyone knows on the line, the English football pyramid. This was tier 10 or tier 9, sorry, of the football pyramid. And the owner of Fleetwood Town was banking with ourselves. And the vice chairman at Fleetwood actually worked for the bank as well. So to cut a long story short there, the business of the owner grew. The football club that he'd recently taken over, he'd put some investment in and started to gain a bit of traction, and then approached me 12 years ago whether I wanted to be the CEO of this football club. I didn't even know what a CEO would actually do at a football club at that particular point in time. I was probably at the time thinking, well, my wife was probably thinking, you are mental, going to a very, very run-down amateur football club and giving up a job at a bank with a company car and a pension and holidays and all what comes with it. But I followed my passion, and in the end, I made a great decision. And that's where I am here today.
So it's the love of the game that took you to where you are.
It's the love of the game, yeah, and that opportunity that arose.
And you've seen it, I suppose, you said tier 9, you've seen the journey that Fleetwood have been on. I mean, and this year, I think if COVID hadn't have hit, I've spoken to a couple of people in the club about this, but I think if COVID hadn't have hit, I think automatic promotion to the championship would have been a very, very strong probability. How does that journey, you've been there for a while, that journey from tier 9 all the way through to the potential championship, and I think it's £100 million that you get for joining that championship. I might be wrong there, but how excited has that journey been for you, and how many changes have you seen throughout the club during that period of time?
Well, when you start, I actually joined. The chairman had commenced his journey at tier 9, and I think they were at the 7th tier when I actually joined them. But over that period, the chairman's tenure, we did, like you say, we achieved 5 promotions in the space of 10 years, which is pretty much unique in English football to just keep ramping through the leagues. When you talk about change, crikey, that first day, there was probably about, I think when the chairman started, there was 100 people. I think when I joined, there was about 500 people. The stadium was run down. It was just purely grassroots football, grassroots amateur football. But I think that passion, that excitement, certainly with the investment and the vision and demands of an owner, alongside the effort and the love of the game and everything else you put into it, you can achieve big things, and you go up against clubs who you're thinking, wow, we're going to be playing clubs you won't be familiar with, Lancaster City and Barrow soon, and you're thinking, wow, we're going to be playing these big boys. And then when you get there, you think, hang on a minute, they're not all that. We can do things better than these football clubs. You'll go around them, you're thinking, and this is no disrespect to any of those clubs, because Barrow have been on a great recent journey and are now back in the Football League, which is great. I just use them as just 2 examples of clubs we'd look up to at that particular point in time. But you'd go around there and look at the stadiums, look at the people there, look at the setup and think, we can do better than this. And just that journey just started to roll. And every year we'd get there and think, we can do better. However, as you rightly say, when you start to get into League One, this is where you see the fallout of the Premier League clubs who haven't done it so well over the previous years. Examples presently: Sunderland, Ipswich, Portsmouth, to name 3 clubs. Sheffield United were in our league not so long ago. So to see and go up against clubs like that, you have got to do something a little bit different. Sunderland Stadium has a capacity greater than the population of Fleetwood. So, pure economics would tell you at that particular point that we've got to do something different. And it is about many things, and we'll obviously come on to those many things which make it tick. But the changes have been incredible. You know, we've built training ground. We can talk about. We've built the redeveloped the stadium. That's not completely where we'd want it to be, but we've certainly redeveloped it from when I started. And it's just that learning process and having that work ethic, that ongoing desire, that passion for what you do, which I think has got us where we are today, and an owner with an incredible amount of money to put into it. But it isn't just the money. It's about having a passion, a dream, and wanting something and enjoying something.
I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Pilley when at Christmas I was over, and I'll come on to this later, but I was over watching a game with my son. He's played Portsmouth in the FA Cup, and he came and he introduced himself. And I've got a very, very good friend who's supported Fleetwood since he actually lives in Thornton, and he supported Fleetwood all these days. And he can remember that the hospitality at Fleetwood was a pie and bovril and a shack next to where the current canteen is. So, you know, he's seen those journeys as well, and he's came through it. But talking about, you know, the chairman and the financial investment, you may not be aware, but there's 12 clubs going into the 2021 season here in Australia. All of them have got to apply for a licence to the FFA, which is the Football Federation of Australia. Much like I'm sure it's the same over in the UK. Certainly in Scotland, you've got to go to the SPL and things like that as well. But one of the clubs the owner has recently handed back his licence, simply because they don't have the money to invest. He doesn't want to put any more money into the club. And as a result, the club is now in serious danger of becoming no longer a club, you know, becoming defunct. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, because there's some good people at that club, fantastic CEO called Sean Mellencamp, and a fantastic manager called Alan Stajic. But we talk about Mr. Pilley having a substantial amount of revenue, shall we say. There's a number of different ownership opportunities in clubs. You've got, you know, fan-based clubs like my old club Motherwell. They're owned by the fans. You've got provincial clubs like Stenhousemuir, another club I used to play with, and you've got ownership like the City Group that own Manchester and Melbourne City and New York, and obviously you've got the individuals like Mr. Pilley. So in terms of the different investment models, how important is it that you've got those variations in the investment models from a business standpoint, and what are the benefits and the pitfalls that you see of each, or a couple of different ones of those?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. With regards to the varying ownership models, as a number of the people on the call may have seen recently, there's been Wigan who've been placed into administration. There are issues out there in the public domain in relation to Charlton Athletic, who've recently been relegated to our division, where there's wrangling over the current ownerships, and Bury FC, who we lost sadly last year from the Football League as a consequence of the ownership at that particular football club. So there are current challenges. The Bury situation has put a broader spotlight on this, but even more so, you know, COVID as well has probably brought this to the fore a little bit further as well. And a lot of the supporters aren't happy, you know, what they're seeing, you know, and us working in football clubs and the EFL, no one wants to see football tables with clubs missing, with minus 12 points against them, with people having to play scholars rather than full professionals. So there's been some problems, and there will continue to be problems. So there are a number of types of owners. Historically, it would be the local businessman done well and putting a couple of quid back into the community and allowing those football clubs to thrive on a local benefactor. And I think we still have that traditional ownership model here at Fleetwood, local benefactor. wider business structure. There's maybe 1,000 people he employs in the local area, in his gas and energy supply business and various other sets of businesses. So it probably comes from that old-fashioned model, which I think is quite important to understand, because I think that's where you get the passion, that's where you get the loyalty, that's where you get people making decisions which don't just affect the business of the football club, but affect all those around it. And League Two and League One probably still have a little bit of that because of the investment required. While it's a lot of money our chairman has put up and put in League One and League Two, a lot of those clubs do have owners who can afford to put that extra money into those football clubs and still have that passion and loyalty. When you move into the Championship, because of the leap in financial income, it's not quite as great as you've established, but certainly there's a huge jump from when we move into the Championship. I say when, confidently. The ownership models are quite different. There are many foreign ownership groups, and with that, there becomes challenges. Some of these have got very, very deep pockets, varying reasons for getting involved in these football clubs. Some of them just fancy owning a football club. Others just see the pure law of the Premier League and see this as an opportunity to invest. And the problem then becomes that when you do invest and when you do spend many, many, many millions in a football club, when you don't have that local feeling for it, at what point does this become a problem for that owner who's distant? And then at what point does that then become a problem for that football club? So the ownership models in the Championship are, and I don't want to call every single club in the Championship that, because that is far from the case, but there are a number of ownership models in the Championship where that foreign ownership could in the future cause a problem. And we've seen it at Wigan. We're not party to, and I don't think anybody knows the full story behind the situation at Wigan. But from the outside, it would appear that a foreign owner no longer wishes to fund a football club, and that's the problem you have. At what point might those owners become frustrated? However, the dilemma then is for an owner of our football club such, if you prevented the wider world from owning a football club for whatever rules you were to put in place, where is the value? Where can he sell? How can he get rid of these assets and keep them moving? Who wants to actually buy and put into a football club at a local level? So that's the dilemma, is how the owners and directors test, which is within the EFL. It needs strengthening, it needs work, it needs to prevent clubs falling into the wrong hands. But how is that done, and what does that consist of, is the $1 million question.
So is there something, I mean, I know you're obviously on the FA board as well. Is there something that the FA have put in place to ensure that the owners are right and proper to come into these clubs? I mean, I know we've recently had the up and down of Newcastle going to be bought over. I think it was 300 million they were looking at, and now that's no longer going to happen. Is there something that the FA have put in place, or is it something that FIFA regulations have put in place, if you're aware?
Well, the regulations to own a football club in the EFL, in the English Football League, the regulation is in place from the English Football League themselves. So we regulate, and just for those out there, I am one of the directors and board members of the Football League. The 72 clubs, I'm one of 2 representatives from League One who sit on the board. So just to give you a bit of background, and as part of that, I do represent the professional game on the FA Council as well. So I'm across both the regulatory side and obviously the club side. So from the EFL point of view, there is an owners and directors test. It has certain disqualifying conditions, which you can probably probably guess, in relation to previous bankruptcies and et cetera, and certain convictions which prevent certain people owning football clubs. There are elements in relation to the proof of funding, so business plans and et cetera, to prove you have the funds to invest into that football club. However, the problem therein lies if you pass the conditions, you don't have any of the disqualifying conditions, you prove you have the wealth to invest into that football club, you then can become an owner of that football club. You can then in the future decide you no longer want to put your money into that football club, and therein the problem lies. So how that problem is resolved, whether it is bonds which are put up, where people have to put money aside when they take over a football club, which can be used to support that football club if the owner decides to turn the tap off financially, whether there is subjective criteria similar to some North American sports, where to buy into certain franchises, certain sports models, they require the owners to be subjectively interviewed to, you know, join their group, join their club. It does need strengthening, it needs improving, and it needs work. Ultimately, everyone's got to play the part, the EFL, the FA, I don't know really to what extent FIFA, but certainly on our home turf, the owners and directors test needs some attention, and the EFL are giving it some attention, and rightly so, and that needs to be moved on to try and prevent the issues we've seen with Bury, what we've seen currently with Wigan, and the current problems we're seeing at Charlton. Whether any amendments to the owners and directors test would prevent any of those, we're talking in hindsight, but it certainly needs to be work upon it.
So obviously, you know, we're talking about the financial aspect of the business just now, and there's a lot of questions coming through, both, you know, from the financial side and also from the development side as well. I want to ask one of our callers, Harry Suter fan. For those that don't know, Harry Suter is an Australian international and was on loan to Fleetwood last year. But Harry Suter fan, good evening. You've got a question that you'd like to ask. It does have the financial implications question. So Harry, if you want to ask Steve the question, mate.
Yeah, no problem. Steve, thanks for your time. Just looking to find out a little bit more about how the TV money works. Through all the leagues in Australia, we only have one division of professional football, and all those clubs receive a payment quarterly. And it's in a bit of debate at the moment with regards to the TV deal going down a little bit because of COVID and some other matters. But throughout the English system and the pyramid, can you just give us a bit of a breakdown on how that works from the Premier League right down to even the National League and even beyond?
Yeah, certainly. You know, as you'll know, the Premier League television deal is an incredible amount of money, an incredible figure. The Premier League take the lion's share of that, of course, because it's their product. We benefit from a number of schemes from the Premier League in relation to partial funding of our academy system. We receive solidarity payments, and there are other initiatives which jointly support both the EFL and the Premier League, community schemes, a variety of other bits and pieces. And that particular amount of money, it's nowhere near what the Premier League clubs, you know, you hear them talking of £180 million a club, etc. in the Premier League. It's all gratefully received. You know, we receive a solidarity payment from the Premier League of around about £400,000. We'd probably receive similar in relation to our academy funding, and there are other bits and pieces which go on top of that, and that's in the third tier. So in the Championship, that figure increases somewhat. We end up receiving 12%, broadly speaking, of the revenues which come into the Football League. So the three leagues in the English Football League, Championship, League One and League Two, the revenues which come in, wherever they come from, Premier League and our own broadcasting revenues are split broadly 80% Championship, 12% League One, and 8% goes to League Two. So the Premier League's money comes down as I've determined. The figure I detailed is 12%, and 80% goes to the Championship. And then we receive our own broadcasting revenues as well. Our television deal across the EFL, across the 72 clubs, is worth about £120 million a year with Sky TV. And again, after costs, etc., that's split broadly 80, 12, 8% between the clubs. Into the National League, we don't provide any of our revenues down into the National League other than a parachute payment to relegated clubs. And I do think the Premier League do make a contribution. It might be, I don't know, 50,000 or 100,000 to conference national clubs as part of their revenues. So I hope that answers some part of the question. I think the issue therein lies the gulf between the Premier League and the Championship, and the wage gaps between them, etc. Is something which obviously a chasm can create some problems. And as you've seen with the ownership models, people are chasing the far higher numbers ahead, and often they can get stuck trying to chase that dream of that revenue stack above them. How that revenue is dealt with in the future, can it be smeared further down the league and to greater effect? Yes, probably. How that's done, and how with the Premier League's approval, I don't know at this stage, but hopefully people greater minds than myself can find ways of working to ensure that, you know, all clubs benefit to the extent that will keep them thriving and will benefit the Premier League.
So obviously with the money coming in and all the professional players that we have, that I say we, I mean the collective footballing world has, you know, some players will demand higher salaries, some players will demand lower salaries. We have a question from Kai Maxfield, who, how are you? Kai's got a question that he'd like to ask you with respect to salaries and the salary cap. So Kai, you're on with Steve.
Thanks, James. Hey, Steve.
Hi.
We've just seen the new news that there's a plan to bring in a salary cap for Leagues 1 and League 2 of the football leagues, which is a new thing. I'd like you to put two hats on this one. A, from your FA role, if you're able to comment on the reason for bringing that in, and then from a club role, how do you think that will impact clubs like yourselves and other clubs in the leagues because of the restriction on spending, particularly with the big money clubs not being able to spend that level of money?
Yeah, I could talk quite openly and in detail about this. I actually sat on the working party of the salary cap committee, which was representatives from clubs in League 1 and League 2. And it comprised of myself, 2 or 3 other clubs in the league. Gary Neville, as many of you will know, obviously from his Sky days and on Sky TV. Presently, part owner of Salford City from League 2. Gary was on the working party as well. Interesting. It started out from the review in relation to the demise of Bury FC, where we were looking at how we prevent clubs from going to the wall where they're overcommitting themselves, overspending, owners coming in, spending too much, and as I've said previously, leaving clubs in the lurch when they no longer wish to spend the money in those football clubs. So it was working on that premise of how do we move towards a more sustainable model. We currently have in place what's called a salary cost management protocol, where you can spend a percentage of your income. The problem with that is it didn't help Bury, because they were able to invest certain cash. There was certain money coming into the business from various schemes, which ultimately still saw them overstretch, because it doesn't capture every single part of your cost base, and can be quite complicated. You get esoteric accounting, and it just becomes a whole business in itself, trying to manage the salary cost management protocols. So it was decided that we need to move towards a more sustainable model in various ways. And one of those ways, which we felt in the meantime, while we looked at pure sustainability, not just percentage of income and things like that, how do we understand what a football club is going to earn, what a football club is going to cost, and who is going to bridge any gap? That will come on board. That will take time to progress. And that's a key part of, I suppose, finalising the full sustainability model. But part of the sustainability model was, and what we felt was, the wages, which had become a little bit of out of sync, a bit of out of control. When I remember coming into League One, I think 6 or 7 years ago, to pay a player £2,000 per week, that was sort of the top end. You know, that was where you were going. It was a £2,250 a week. Now it's £4,000 to £5,000 a week, and that's in such a short space of time. The Premier League stretching a lot of this, the Championship wages going up also pull this in that direction. So it was felt we needed to get a bit of control over those wages and that wage inflation. And it's been done in other sports. We debated the topic heavily. We debated it with our clubs, and came to the conclusion that we had to start somewhere. This will not be the end of the journey. This will not solve every single ill in relation to owners stretching themselves, etc. This is a start, a pure start to address that sustainability issue with football clubs. And bringing down those wages was important, so that clubs do focus their attention on what they're spending more wisely. This isn't about individual player salary caps. This is about a club salary cap. And there are certain exemptions, such as under 21s, and you can still buy players in, etc. So it doesn't cover every part of it, but it just stops that stretch of wages, which was causing a problem. To come on to the second point, how do I see this at Fleetwood, a smaller club, and how is that perceived by larger clubs, Sunderland, Portsmouth, Ipswich? There are other clubs to name. Yeah, they probably see the fact that some of their revenues now they can't spend on players. And this is revenues where they're saying, well, this isn't an owner stretching himself. This is our profit. You know, we should be able to invest into our football clubs. And maybe in time that issue is addressed, and we look, as I said, in the sustainability, the pure sustainability piece, that these things are all in the melting pot and all things to discuss and move further with. But at the present point in time, and certainly during the COVID pandemic, and incidentally, this commenced before that, so it wasn't something that was brought in as a consequence, but it was felt we had to start somewhere. We've got to start somewhere. If we don't start somewhere now, we may see other clubs go to the wall. So it was about starting on a journey and getting something over the line with our clubs, which we can work with. We can iterate the regulation. We can see which way it's going. We can see the impact and the effect on players leaving the game and player salaries. But we can work with something and start with something to obtain a more sustainable future for our football clubs. And yeah, you know, Sunderland and Portsmouth and other clubs may talk about this level as a playing field, and I'm not so sure it does. You know, if you've got a player who comes to Fleetwood and sees Fleetwood Stadium, and a player that goes to see Sunderland in a 36,000 stadium, you should be able to attract that player. You should still be able to attract that player. If we both got a similar amount of money we can spend on that player, you should still be able to attract that player. And if you've got the profit, you can spend the money on under 21 players. You can spend the money on better infrastructure, better coaches, all the other things around it. So it doesn't stop you spending your money. It just stops that creep of player wages and putting too much money into the players and agents' pockets when this money can go back into football itself. And I'm not here to try and say players shouldn't be paid a reasonable amount of money. They will still be paid a reasonable amount of money. And you won't find one academy player today who will say, I'm not going to carry on playing football in my academy in order to become a professional footballer, because the maximum I'm probably going to earn playing in League One is, I don't know, £120,000 a year. Any young footballer who are delighted to go on that journey and earn that. So it's a journey. It's a good question. It's been a real hot topic of debate, and we'll see where it goes. But I felt it was important for football that we got something in play, and let's work with it, and let's work together with it.
That's a brilliant question, Kai, and you know, the response as well is really, really interesting, Steve. Have you managed to see Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix?
I have indeed.
So you know, it was my son watched it and he says to me, Dad, you've got to watch this. And I couldn't put it off. I binge watched it to see how that club was actually run, you know, with Martin Bain and then the guys coming in from down south. It was a phenomenal insight into the runnings of an English club. I'm fortunate enough to have been involved in the Scottish side, but never on that English side of things. And to understand the money that's getting spent, you're absolutely right. You know, players should still have the ability to go anywhere. You know, it's the passion and the desire for football is what should drive a professional player. Any youth player, any academy player that gets 120 grand a year, they bite your hand off, you know, because it's a passion for the game. That's just my personal take on it. But talking about academy players, it's a brilliant segue. For those that may not have been there, but Pulfoot Farm, which is the training facility of Fleetwood Town, is a phenomenal area. I think there's, how many pitches have you got at Pulfoot, Steve?
16.
16 pitches. 16 pitches. Football New South Wales has 3 at their facility. 16 pitches, and that's including 5-a-side courts as well. And they've just secured a further 7-figure investment to build one of the domes over one of the 3G pitches and apply for Tier 2 status in the academy structure in England. Can you just explain, Steve, just before I go on to the academy and the Fleetwood Academy and the FATIFA programme, can you just explain the different tiering structures within the English game in terms of the academy levels and what exactly it means? We've tried to do something similar very briefly over here in Australia. But one of the statements that I've had recently was it's too difficult to manage. But can you just explain the tier structure and the importance of Fleetwood moving to a Tier 2 academy structure?
Yeah, certainly. We're presently Tier 3, and there are 4 tiers of licensed academies in England. Tier 4 is for clubs who only have a programme for under 18s and under 21s, and maybe just under 18s alone. Tier 3 is the entry level for academies who have an official programme for under 9 all the way through to under 18. So that's the 3rd tier, under 9s all the way up to under 18s and under 23s if you choose. Tier 2 and Tier 1 are exactly the same programme from under 8s all the way through to under 23s. The difference in the tiering is the qualitative standard and the requirements of each to achieve a certain qualitative standard. So as an example, because of the costs of operating the academy, the entry level, you are required to deliver a certain set of auditory requirements, the amount of contact time, all various things in relation to the boys you've got on the programme. And alongside that, there are certain roles you need to have employed within the organisation to enable you to receive the funding which comes from the Premier League. So if you achieve the standards of of Category 3, your audit will allow you to receive the Premier League funding, which is around 60%. It should work out around 60% of your overall costs are covered by the Premier League. So you've got to find 40% yourself as a club. Tier 2, basically you will play, you need more people in the building. So there's different types of roles you need to improve on. You might need a strength and conditioning coach. You might need a player care. You might need another analyst. So basically it just improves the quality of the standard of the operation according to the levels which clubs can achieve. But obviously the entry criteria, the Premier League says tier 3. If you can achieve that with the amount of staff we feel we need in that structure, with all the regulations around it, you can achieve that level of funding. And what tends to happen there after on the player side is that the tier 3 teams will play each other. The tier 2 clubs will play each other, and also some tier 1 clubs. So as you go up, the games program for the boys tends to become more competitive, because the higher up you go, you've got the bigger clubs who are spending more on their academies and are attracting the better players. They've got more coaches in the system, so the games program becomes more competitive as you go through the tiers. And importantly as well, the value of your player for compensation increases as well. So in England, we have our own compensation table for the professional game, for domestic transfers, and the value doubles for each year you have each boy in the building when you move from Category 3 to Category 2 and then to Category 1. So the value of each player, if they are taken by another club, becomes far greater as well. So basically the quality increases, the games program becomes more competitive, and the value of your assets becomes greater. But of course, the auditory process, the requirements to run each step of that academy system becomes far greater. You know, as an example, you said we're investing in a dome to achieve Category 2 status. That is one prerequisite on the audit, that we do need an indoor facility, which is our own. Hence the reason that we need to invest in that. It comes with more money from the Premier League, but again, far greater staffing structure, far greater energy has to go into delivering the qualitative standard for the boys out there. So effectively, it's a graduated process of quality standards to enable the Premier League to position their funding in the right way.
So for anyone that wants to look, there's a document that's on the website, and it's the Charter for Players and Parents for the Youth Development Academies. It's an 80-page document, and it's a fascinating read. It gives you a good insight into the player recognition system, the academy system, the independent advice, and the respect program from the FA as well, and also code of conduct. So it's something I think that here in Australia we should really be looking at. Certainly in Australia we did do a private academy and external providers review a couple of years ago, which was done by Football New South Wales. But I strongly recommend, if you can, reading that Charter Academy for Players and Parents, because it gives you a real insight into how the game for academies and tier 2, tier 3, etc., and professional clubs is actually run. It's a fascinating read, it really is. Moving on, Steve, we've finished the first half, we're into the second half now, so we're making good time. We talk about the academy structure, we talk about the investment, we talk about tier 2. I have to take point here and say that I've got a little bit of a bias towards Fleetwood here because of your international academy program called FATIFA. Can you just explain the FATIFA program? I know you were heavily involved in setting it up. Can you just explain the FATIFA program and the way it works from the international standpoint, and also how it relates to the Fleetwood Town Academy structure as well? The reason I'm asking, there's a couple of people on here who I know are going to be joining the academy program next year. My own son is part of the FATIFA program as well, and is desperate to get back. He's looking to try and get a scholarship in Fleetwood. You know, can you just explain the FATIFA programme to those people that are on here as well?
Yeah, certainly. We, as you say, we've got a great facility here at Pilfoot Farm, the training ground, and we already had a relationship with a local school, an international boarding school, Rossall School, where we're doing some football work with. So we were familiar with doing work with some international boys. However, we found a group of players training on our pitches. They were hiring the pitches, and we saw them every day, and just got intrigued as to what they were doing and why they were there. And these are boys predominantly from Africa, and we started speaking to one of the coaches, and we established that these boys, in my opinion, were just completely being exploited. They were having hefty amounts of money taken from the pocket with the dream of becoming a Premier League footballer in England. And a number of people on the call may be familiar with schemes such as this. You know, we can do this academy, that academy. There'll be Premier League scouts watching you, games against Premier League academies. And these are just a commercial ruse to play on the heartstrings of young boys who want that professional football dream and the lure of the English game. And when we got underneath it was pretty disgusting. You know, I was unhappy that it was operating on our pitches, even though it was just a hire of our pitches. So we decided to do it ourselves. We thought, right, we can do this, and we can do it with care, with passion, with vision, everything we've done around this football club. Why can't we do this? So we took the boys who were on this scheme. We said, right, they're not coming on our pitches anymore. We're going to run a program. We're going to start it from scratch. You boys can stay on the scheme. Whatever you pay to these people, you're not going to get it back. We're not going to charge you a penny. So whatever you've got left on your arrangement, we'll live with that, and you can come and stay in our accommodation. So we looked after these boys for that period of time, and it's grown from there really. So we brought James Ward over, a boy who's familiar with a similar scheme over in the Manchester area, and it's grown from there. So what it is effectively is it is a commercial product. You know, I make no bones about that. You know, we do make a small amount of profit from it. But the ultimate idea was, we've got such a fantastic facility at Fleetwood. It's quite unique, the facility, in as much that the first team, the academy, everyone is around that same facility. So this was about using all the intellectual property of our staff, the people in the building, to provide that experience which many are trying to do out there, and even the biggest clubs are doing it out there, and I don't think doing it very well, and giving boys who are paying to have their football education developed, done in the proper way, with care, with qualified people, safe surroundings, and with honesty as well. Very few of these boys are going to make it as professional footballers, but one thing we can do is make them better and set them up on certain pathways, so we can invest that time, effort and energy in them, make them better footballers, give them the exposure to facilities, good coaches, and let them know with honesty, right, where we see their pathway, and try and support them on that pathway, wherever it might be. And also, because it is alongside our academy, they do dip in, they do play alongside them, they play games alongside them, they'll dip into sessions where the boys are up to those standards, so they're underneath the noses of our academy coaches as well. And we do, you know, there have been one or two gems in there, and I have no doubt one or two of them will end up, subject to obviously the immigration status of the individual. We will find one or two gems from that, I'm quite sure. But it's a great program, done with care. As you know, James will tell you that the boys running that have a massive passion for this, real energy, go around the world bringing boys in, take their tools overseas as well, doing the camps. And it's just a great vibe around the place to have another set of individuals, a fresh set of international individuals in the building, which I think, you know, those of you who feel you've got a growth mindset, I do think bringing other cultures and ideas and everything into your building helps. And this, and it's all part of the football club, you know, the part of the fabric of that day-to-day operation. So that's the International Academy. unfortunately, COVID struck, and we are not back in business now until January. But there's going to be around 30 boys back in January. And this is also linked to, I go back to the Rossall School, we also combine our efforts as well with an international boarding school. So this is pre-college education up to the age of 18. So again, boys who are still at the 15, 16, 17, 18 age group, looking and obviously can afford a boarding international school education. We provide a football bolt-on academy standard education program, football education program alongside that. So there are two strands to it, but it's growing. There are around 45 boys at Rossall School who are on the international football education program there, and as I said, we've got about another 30 odd boys on for TIFA, which is directly at our training ground, which is purely football development and football education. It's great. I love having so many different cultures and ideas and people around the building. And some of those boys from the outset, some of those boys who came over from Africa are still with us, which is great. You know, they've loved it, and it's great because I did feel that they were abused, and I'm sure this goes on all around the world. And I think we're just playing our part in making this arena a little bit better.
Yeah, I think there's a few clubs, international clubs, that are taking advantage of a few things. And, you know, I'm not trying to be biased in any way, shape or form here. Having been around football for the best part of 40 years and having played professionally, I've seen how certain things work. The Fleetwood programme is, in my opinion, it's second to none. I think that the care that the people get, you know, you mentioned James Ward, Wardy, Nathan Rooney, Mike Horsfall, you know, these guys really care about the kids, but importantly, it's the coaching and the opportunities that the kids are actually getting. I've watched a few sessions, and the way in which the training is given is completely alien to what I'm sure a lot of different kids have actually got in the past. It's commercial, but it's not a money-making exercise. It's actually for the development of the kids. And, you know, aspirations are there. I know certainly my own son has got aspirations, and I know that he's already had Joey Barton talk to him. So, you know, there's certain things that can happen, and it's on there. And just on that point, Kai has got a question about youth football and pathways into the senior programme within Fleetwood. So maybe if I can hand over to Kai, you can ask Kai again the question that you've got there, if you want to fire away to Steve.
Steve, I'm going to try and pick your brain as much as possible in this chat. It's a unique opportunity to talk to someone who is so involved in football. I'm a youth development coach here in Australia in the National Premier League system. Can you go and talk about your academy system, what links between your youth and senior programs you have, and any success stories out of your program regarding players coming from your academy, then becoming into your senior program and playing professionally for Fleetwood or some other club, either in your league or at a high league?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, start with the first point about the interrelation between the academy and the first team. You know, to start with, just going back to the building is all one. So everybody's in the same building. That interaction is key. You'll find at the biggest clubs that they could even be across two sites, and they just say, can you send me 2 players today? And the 2 players travel in the cars to the first team site and take part in the training session. So the symbiosis of the two in the same building is key as you know, stage one, really, that everyone is together. We have a first team coach who acts as a player development manager. So his responsibility is to work with the younger group of the first team and across and the under-23 program, so understanding the situation in relation to the 21s and even down to the 18s, to ensure that those players in the under-23s and the under-18s get the suitable exposure, training minutes with that first team group at the right time to increase their chances and improve their development. So we have somebody whose sole responsibility, while he's a first team coach, his title and his role is to ensure that he develops those boys into the first team arena, ensuring that their player their individual learning program is delivered in relation to the first team development. So have we got it right? Not all of it, but it's working well. You know, that relationship is key between the academy staff, the under-18 manager. Everyone's got to be able to walk into each other's office and make their case. And have you seen so and so? Why is he not in? You know, and that's the relationship that's got to be formed. But the exposure to that first team sessions and the right sessions at the right time is a key part of the development. However, you will tend to find that it's not the sole element of the development, that the loans program is key. So it's critical that these young boys get the exposure both to the first team minutes in our own space, but that we do find them the right loans at the right time. And you come on to examples, and one superb example I can probably give you is he's a Fleetwood boy himself. He came through the grassroots program, the Fleetwood Town Juniors. He then moved into Fleetwood Town's elite academy. Is Billy Krellin, a Fleetwood boy goalkeeper, who's now England's under-20 goalkeeper, has decided to stay with ourselves despite previously having the attraction of Manchester City and other clubs. Decided that this was the right place to develop because he's far closer to that first team environment than he would be outside that. And the coaching standards, you know, we've got a great goalkeeping coach. There's no reason why Manchester City's goalkeeping program is any better than ourselves. It's just about maybe more people and slightly better facilities, etc. But the exposure to the first team was the reason he stayed. And talking about the loans program, Billy played 1 or 2 games for us last season in League One at the age of 19 as a goalkeeper, which is a difficult thing to do at that age group. But this year we've reflected on where Billy is in his progress, and we've decided to place Billy out on loan. So Billy's now on loan at Bolton Wanderers, a big club in the past, now in League Two, and will play his season for Bolton Wanderers as part of his development. So that's one success story to the extent that we've got an international in the building, someone who's really coming up on the track, managing his development in the right way, getting him the right loan at the right time, exposure to the first team at the right time, and hopefully he will bear fruit for us next season and may become a very valuable asset for us as an England international goalkeeper in our building. As for first team success, we've had a number of debuts from the academy, but as the academy is only actually in its 5th year this year, that development progress is still coming through. So there are a number around the first team group: James Hill, Dylan Boyle, another Boyle, around that first team group. This is a long-term program, and we've got to be patient. We've got to make sure we put the right processes in place, the right standards in place, the right loans, exposure to first team, and it will bear its fruit. And I think with the salary cap coming in, which also alongside it is restricting squad sizes as well, 22 this year, 20 next year, but under 21s are excluded. So the development of the under 21s and their exposure, I think in time, maybe not this year, perhaps not next year, but certainly we're going to see a trend in that direction. So the more prepared our academy boys are, I think the greater chances of exposure are going to come.
I think that's a brilliant point. You know, the younger players coming through. You'd Shaden Morris, I think, just played as well He was coming through, and he scored last weekend with your friendly game as well.
He did, yes, yeah.
He was in the same hotel. He was working alongside Shay. But interesting about the younger players coming through. Obviously, how many scholarships did Fleetwood hand out last year?
We normally run with 18 scholars. So you would normally get 9 first years and 9 second years. And we are just at the moment, because the academy is a relatively fledgling academy, the normal transition would be your under 16s. 9 of them would move to the under 18s first year. Then you move to your second years, and then a number of them would be given their first year professional contract. Yeah. That's if you got it bang on perfect.
So the scholarship programs are obviously coming through the FATIFA program as well. There's an opportunity for the FATIFA programs to get the scholars as well at that point.
Yeah, indeed. They're in the spotlight, and as I said, because we aren't at the point where our under 16s and the under 16s is one example. Because it's a relatively new academy, the qualitative standard isn't quite there sometimes to get into that under 18s group. So as much as we want to be loyal, as much as we want to try and keep the people who we put the energy and intellectual property into over the previous years, we've got to be realistic about it. So we do have to find players to come in from elsewhere still. If you can get a good number of your own under 16s through, I think we brought 3 or 4 through this year. So they join us tomorrow. So they'll come from under 16s. They'll join us on the scholarship program as from tomorrow. So first time living away and education program and full-time professional environment that starts for them tomorrow. So we brought I think 4 through from that under 16 group. So of course we still need to fill in the gaps. For FATIFA, lads are under our nose, the boys at Rossall under our nose, and obviously our scouting infrastructure of all the boys who've been released from maybe some of the Category 1 academies may fill in some of those gaps. But the more of your own you can get through, the less pressure of you and the less risk. You're bringing a player in you don't know. You've seen him once or twice. You've got a good feedback from these previous coaches. Can he fit into your building? You don't know. Yeah. So it's can you developing your own talent, and the boys who are around you are the ones you know the most. But it comes with the risk if you go elsewhere to those who are in the building, as I said.
Yeah, so you're looking to develop your own, and that's a great way to look at it, because these are the players that will play for you, that will play for the badge. They won't play for anything else because they've got the passion there and they just want to be successful and they want the opportunity to do it. So yeah, the whole program, just for people on this call, for people outside, Fleetwood Town's International Football Academy are coming to Australia in January of 2021, COVID permitting. They are looking to hold an identification clinic in mid-January prior to the school holidays going back. The sister company of Football Business Network, Football Pathway, is working with the FATIFA program, and details will be coming out for that. So this is an opportunity for Australian players, and I know the FATIFA program has got kids from Adelaide, kids from Sydney as well. It's an opportunity for these kids to actually experience what it's like to play and live in a professional footballing environment, and it's something that I would heartily recommend. We are approaching coming towards the end. There is a couple of questions that are coming through just now, Steve. I want to hand over to Harry Souters fan again. He has I think a question that is going to lead us on to the extra time and what we're doing here. So I'm going to unmute Harry again to see if he wants to fire away this question. So over to yourself, Harry, Souters fan.
Sure, thanks for that. Yeah, just wanted to ask about your ambitions for the upcoming season. Of course, promotion's probably one of them, but you've got, I'd imagine, crowds being restricted or not allowed in at all. So can you talk us through how you're looking to connect or keep connected with your fans and some of the things you're trying to do to keep revenues ticking into the club when you can't offer that match day experience. And as we know, English football has a lot of fixtures, so you won't be, I'd imagine, able to welcome them to the stadium regularly, at least in the first part of the season.
No, good question. You know, this is, as everyone knows out there, it's been a very dynamic situation, this, and you're just going to react to every turn and everything that's thrown at you. So it's been difficult to forecast budgets for the season for that very reason. We don't know when fans can come back in, how many, when, what they can do when they're here. Can they spend money on the concessions for the drinks and things? Very, very difficult. So where it sits presently is we've got a fixture start date on September the 12th. The League Cup may be a week or two before that, so that's virtually the next week or so. The fixtures are out next Friday. The League Cup draw is on Tuesday, so we'll get our schedule at that point. We've received indication that from the outset we might be able to hold some test events with fans in the stadium from the word go, to try and then have that all in place by October, so then we can run with the socially distanced guideline spectator policy from October. So we might see people in the stadium from the get-go. However, it's likely only to be in the region of, I don't know, up to 1,500 people in the stadium, maybe even as less as 1,000. We're still working with the authorities and trying to understand how that works. We've got these social bubbles and all these sort of things. So it's a minefield, but we're trying to work the best we can to get as many people in the stadium as possible. It's unlikely that we're going to have our hospitality lounge, which holds 250 people, open anywhere near that extent, maybe as few as, I don't know, 50 to 70 people in there. Can people buy drinks? They might not be able to from the word go. It's going to be very, very different experience. So, and obviously all that comes with reduced levels of income. So again, a further problem. When you talk about the engagement with fans, as a consequence of that, we are going to be able to, it is likely, stream all our games behind a payment gateway. So all our games, home and away, will be streamed behind I think it's going to be about a £10 match pass to watch any of our games. Any season ticket, we're still hopeful we'll get all our season ticket holders in the stadium, which are presently around about 1,700 or so. Any we can't get into the stadium, they will be able to watch the games for free through our online streaming of the games. So a very, very difficult, very, very difficult time as a football club. We have managed to get the training ground open, which is a destination restaurant and venue. It's not hidden behind any gates or anything. Fabulous restaurant, which has been really, really busy. People are still out there, or back in there, shall I say, eating our food, drinking our beer, watching training sessions. The kids are back on the grass, the grassroots football. We've got a great community program there. So we've got all amateur teams playing on there. We've got five-a-side football, all of which is started to get back into play now. And quite uniquely for the Northwest, we've had a bit of sunshine, which you can probably just about say we don't get much of it. So people are out there in the beer garden enjoying the delights of the training ground. So this is one of the great part about our training ground, that people can hang around it. There's play park on there, five-a-side football, bars, everything. It's got a lot. So that's been a great success. And it's a great way to integrate with your fans again, so the fans can come in and still feel a part of the football club, watch a bit of training at a time where they're not allowed in the stadium. So difficult times ahead. I think we've got a great level of social media, so we try and keep all that moving, and do as much as we can and make the most of a difficult situation. And on the income side, we are still hopeful of a rescue package to come, whether that's support from the Premier League, the EFL, or government, to keep our clubs alive. Because while, you know, we just talk about football here in the new season, we've got to be mindful of the fact that the income into our football clubs has been decimated. And not only that, the investors, often people like our chairman, are decimated. Their incomes are decimated from their businesses. So we need money. We do need money, because otherwise down the track somewhere, whether it's October, November, January, February, this is going to pinch, and some clubs may not make it. But I'm confident we'll find a way. I'm confident we'll find a solution to some of the financial problems.
Brilliant. Steve, we're going to go for one final question from the audience. I'm going to hand back over to Kai, because it's I think it's quite a good way to finish the questions from the audience. So Kai, back onto yourself. You can ask the final question of Steve before I do a little bit of a quick fire round for him.
Thanks, James, and much appreciation to you, mate, for organising this. This has been brilliant. Steve, I will admit to being a Blackburn Rovers fan. So a small club that got to the top of the Premier League. Some of the facilities and programs you have described tonight for us are better than clubs in the Premier League have. To be honest, your academy, etc., sounds up there with some of the best systems out there. What is the ambition of Fleetwood Town over the next 5 years or so? Where does Fleetwood Town see themselves as being able to achieve in football, both on the pitch and off the pitch?
Good question. Yeah, very good question. We've never, I suppose we've never got overly, stating our ambitions too greatly. No, we're not going to get in the Premier League by this year, or we're going to be in the Championship by that year. I think every day you've got to want to be better. Every day you've got to be looking for ways to improve. And I think that's what we've continually done. I would say we would certainly want to be a club who's experienced the Championship and maybe still in the Championship in 5 years' time. I'd be disappointed if we hadn't had that experience and that exposure. So I think we can certainly achieve the Championship. You know, we've missed out on the playoffs this time, and 4 years ago we also missed out on the playoffs to get there. So we've been very close. And once you're in the Championship, you know, who knows where that takes you? You know, who knows where you go when you are doing things very well as a football club? You're always going to be up against the incredible might of the investment of owners, as I've previously mentioned. But if you do things right, you can get there. You'll see Blackburn Rovers, fierce rivals, Burnley. Fantastic story. Small town football club in East Lancashire, maybe 40 miles from ourselves. Got promoted to the Premier League with one of the smallest budgets. Great level of ownership model and respect from the owners, who are local guys, and do things very well, and have held their own in the Premier League. So why can't a club like Fleetwood get in the Premier League again? If Burnley have done it, Blackpool have been there. There are other examples. So do we think heavily about getting there? No. Do we think we could possibly be us one day? Yes. Let's just keep doing things in the right way. And it's not just about that successive promotion, because obviously trying to get promoted every year, you run out of leagues at some point. This is about many things. This is about developing your academy. This is about, you know, the pleasure of seeing a Fleetwood player, a Fleetwood born player playing in your team who's come through the academy, who you sell for, you know, a phenomenal amount of money. And you give the owner something back that he's put in. You know, all these things are part of the success. You know, even the success of the Fatifa program. You know, all these things are, for me, things that we need to improve on. And keeping the owner interested and excited, keeping me enthused and excited, you know, is very important. And keeping all our stakeholders, all the groups, the junior teams, the women's team, we have the older guys, the walking footballers, community trust, all these stakeholders, and engaging with them and making them feel part of a big community makes us all feel good, and is all part of our progress. So it's not just on the football pitch, but that's what we live in. That's what we live for. Can we get promotion? Can we enjoy some of them FA Cup fixtures against the big Premier League teams? All them things are what we strive to, and that's where our ambitions lie. So will we be in the Will we be in the Premier League in 10 years? Probably not. Do we think we can be? Well, maybe. Championship, yeah, definitely. Let's give it our best shot.
So I need to ask you, getting tapped on the shoulder here by my young boy. He was telling me that there was a documentary made for Fleetwood whilst he was over there. Was there a documentary made for Fleetwood Town, and if so, when's that going to be up and running?
There is, yeah. We've just had the 5th and final episode. Actually, funnily enough, I watched it last night. So there is a documentary. We are now in the process of trying to get this out to market. And it covers Joey's first 2 years of the football club. And it's a real interesting watch. It's not just the traditional football documentary where you follow a season and then post-match reaction, a few characters, next game. It's just There's some general themes around Joey, Ched Evans, the chairman, the town of Fleetwood, COVID. It's all in there. So it's a great watch. We are just trying to weave our way through the minefield, which is the broadcasting world.
Well, look, I think it's something that certainly the people in this call, and hopefully the people that will be watching this later will come back to. Steve, I can't thank you enough. We're going to finish off this evening just a little bit of a sort of 60-second round questions. 5 questions and hopefully 5 straight answers. So we'll start off with your outside of Fleetwood. Who's your favourite team?
Outside of Fleetwood is my favourite team. Well, it used to be Blackpool, but
can't say that now.
It certainly isn't. It certainly isn't now, because I grew up as a boy at Blackpool, but working in football and at a football club, it's very hard to support another team. So it'd have to be England.
Yeah, very diplomatic answer, sir. Favourite player?
Favourite player?
Yeah.
I'm going to say one of our legends, Nathan Pond, is my favourite player. 500 times for Fleetwood. He's in the Guinness Book of Records for making the most promotions with one football club. He started in step 8 with us. Sorry, step 9. Made it all the way through to where we are now. He's not with us anymore. He couldn't make it any further, but he's played an incredible 6 different leagues in English football.
Wow. That's unheard of. Your favourite moment in football?
Favourite moment in football for me has to be at Fleetwood. I'll give you two actually. Favourite moment in football has to be at Fleetwood at Wembley when we got promoted to League One in the playoffs at Wembley. Fabulous day. Personally, was probably being in the crowd watching England win away in Munich 5-1. A World Cup qualifier that some of those on the line might be able to remember.
Yeah, I'm trying to forget about that one, if I'm being honest with you. Most influential person you've met, either in football or in business?
I'd probably have to say, without blowing smoke anywhere, I'd probably have to say our chairman. You know, he's been influential in my career, given me opportunity. You know, I've worked hard for him. And he's allowed me broadly to get on with what I think I'm best at. Stays close, supported. We support each other, and I think that relationship has been able to allow Fleetwood to flourish, and me personally as well.
He's a very influential man. Let me tell you, he's a very impressive man. Really is. Final question for you, Steve. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Best advice I'd ever been given. Just follow your passion, and don't try and get there too soon. You know, hard work does pay off. Yeah,
and I think that's a great way to finish, because that's certainly a message that can be given to a lot of different young footballers coming. You know, if it's going to happen, it'll happen. Just don't push it. Steve Curwood, thank you so much indeed for joining us this evening. To those that have been on the call and to those who are watching, thank you very, very much indeed for being with us for the 90 minutes with Fleetwood Town CEO Steve Curwood. I hope you've learned a lot and you've heard a number of different things, and I hope you've really, really enjoyed it. So thank you very much again for joining us this evening, Steve. Once again, my sincere thanks, taking out your busy day. And the Football Business Network will be back at some point in the not too distant future. Don't know if we're going to have a guest as impressive business-wise as Steve, but I'm sure we'll get someone else. Yeah, look, thank you very much indeed for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will see you all hopefully again very soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and bye-bye.
Thank you.